This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. And my voice to those who care. It's time we cry, it's time we care, it's time to stand. It starts with a voice.
This episode is brought to you by ComEd. Welcome to the Special Chronicles show. This is episode 477. My name is Daniel, and I'm the founder of Special Chronicles, a Southern Survival International Global Messenger, Special Olympics, and a ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador. SpecialChronicles.com is where you can go for links to follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And be sure to also subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple. It goes a long way to let more people know about this show. And be sure to also subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you want to watch the live stream video episode and see us side by side next to each other. You can subscribe to our channel on YouTube and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of new episodes. You can sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content. Again, you can put all those links to subscribe and follow on SpecialChronicles.com. Our guest this week is a returning guest on the program today. Is our good friend and fellow podcast host on this network, the Special Chronicles Network, is our friend Lisa Noble from Special Olympics, Illinois. So please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Lisa back to the Special Chronicles show and our EnergyForce series. Welcome back, Lisa.
Oh, thank you, Daniel.
Just imagine a live audience applauding. Yeah. This is part 4 of our EnergyForce series this year, I think. I might have got that. Yeah, I think I got that right. Part 4. So this is episode 477. Listeners, if our listeners recall, when we had you on about a year ago, last spring, to kind of show how you first got involved in the ComEd EnergyForce program, right?
Mm-hmm. So I basically got involved through Special Olympics Illinois. I'm an athlete as well as an athlete leader and a former staff member. Her son used to do the ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program, and then when he decided not to do it anymore, she asked if I'd be willing to do it, and this will be my 4th year, I believe, doing it.
So, and this is Special Chronicles. This is my 5th year with the ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program. And for those of you just listening to us on audio, if just listening to the audio podcast, go check out the video on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter Live, and you will see that Lisa and I are both wearing some new ComEd polos that has the new ComEd logo on there. It has our name on one side, and I think on the sleeve it says ComEd. No, it says, what does it say? I don't even know what it says.
I don't either.
Let's look.
EnergyForce Ambassador.
EnergyForce Ambassador on the sleeve. There we go. We had to look. So if you are just listening to us on our audio, go check out the video on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, and you can see what the new logo looks like. Or you can see it on the screen right now in the upper left corner of the screen, as well as doing one of the sponsor breaks. But for any new listeners, Lisa, I know you told us a little bit about how you got involved, but kind of take our listeners back to, because I'm sure we might have some listeners who might not have heard when you were on this podcast a year ago, but tell us about what disability you're diagnosed with, your connection to our disability community, your role at Special Olympics. I mean, we both have the same role as athlete leaders. And yeah.
So I have high functioning autism, or what they call it now is autism spectrum disorder. I was diagnosed really late. I think I was diagnosed like in my 20s or 30s. In girls, it's a little bit harder to diagnose. And then I'm like Daniel, like you said, I'm an athlete with Special Olympics out of Evanston. I also am an athlete leader. I also serve as a secretary for our athlete input council, and just recently became our Great Lakes representative for the United States Athlete Input Council.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really a lot of fun each week to work alongside you and our other fellow athlete leaders on our athlete leadership council. And and I know we're always grateful for all the notes that you take during our weekly or now bi-weekly meetings. And share with us. I know, and I've for now, this is over 400 episodes of this podcast. We've talked about Special Olympics, and I've shared speeches, and we've interviewed Tim Shivo and other people on this podcast. So I'm sure longtime listeners will have heard a little bit about Special Olympics through the years. We've done inclusive health series on this podcast, and other kind of other related episodes. So Special Olympics is longtime listeners will know a lot about it, because we've covered World Games, and we've covered a lot of different events throughout now 14 years of 14 years of, well, this November will be 14 years of podcasting. So over 14 years, over 400 episodes, we've covered a lot of different stories around Special Olympics. But for those listeners who may not know, or I guess maybe from your perspective as a fellow athlete leader, share with us the mission of what Special Olympics means to you.
Well, I guess what it means to me is just to try your best. I try, even off the field, I try to live my life as I think everybody should. And just remembering what the oath says. I wake up every morning, thinking about, trying your best, and if, just to make the best out of life you can, and like you have too. I like the fact that I get to mentor people, that, can go up the ranks, and, and I just feel like it's a family, I think we're all a huge family.
Yeah. And I've talked a little bit about that as well, how Special Olympics Radio is like a second family to a lot of us athlete leaders. And I love what you said about going off the field of play. We're recording this on the 19th of April. People will hear this the week of the 25th, 4th, whatever that next week is. But I just this morning spoke on a panel with CNA and fellow SSIGM, and Renee and I both spoke, and there was a question and answer, and one of the questions we played, I think they asked, I'm blanking on the exact question, but it was something kind of to the same line of what you said, and it was about how people can, or what people can do to help those of us with ID, those of us with disabilities and jobs. And one of the things I said was, and I'm sure you can comment and agree with this, but was to come to our Special Olympics events, to get to know us, to really see what we're able to do off the field. There was a lot that people can see what we're able to do in our sports on the field, but then when people talk to you, talk to me, talk to the over 4 million athletes in Special Olympics across the country, the over 23,000 athletes in Illinois, and they get to hear our stories, they're able to see what we're able to do off the field. Take like this podcast, for example. Take your podcast. Take all this leadership skills that we're able to do off the field. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Oh no, I definitely agree. I mean, there's times where, like even we have a good relationship with Northwestern, and even some of the students are like shocked that like, oh, you have your own podcast, or they're even shocked to find out like I'm married. I've been married for 13 years. It's like, wait a minute, that's not. They only see us. I think that until they come to one of our events or something, they only know Special Olympics as a sport. They don't know that it's outside of the sport. There's a whole lot more. So
yeah, and I think a lot of times people might see the challenges that we have, but once they talk to you, they talk to myself, they talk to us. I think really get to kind of hear our stories and see that there's a lot more that we
right. And again, I always say it this way, not everybody that has an intellectual disability isn't the same. They don't look the same. It's like we all are unique. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses. So we just need to break down those barriers or stereotypes.
Yeah, absolutely. Right before we take our first break, share with us what you enjoy about you. You said you this is now your fourth year.
Yes.
To ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program. So what do you enjoy about being a ComEd and EnergyForce Ambassador?
I think just intermingling with the public. I think just being able to show them that just because, again, going back to our previous conversation, just because I might have an intellectual disability, doesn't mean that I can't live a fulfilling life, or I can't, make a living telling people, how to save energy. So that's kind of what my most, thing that I like the best about it.
Yeah. Awesome. I think it ties in perfectly with what we were just talking about going off the field. What ComEd is doing with this EnergyForce Ambassador Program, allowing those of us with allowing those of us with disabilities to be able to educate the public about energy efficiency is another example that the community, whether we're at in-person events, whether we're doing a podcast like we're doing now, they're able to see what we're able to do. Well, we're going to go ahead and take our first break, because if it wasn't for generous supporters, then we wouldn't be able to be behind the microphone. So if you are listening and you want to help support us, we're going to let you know how you can become a supporter of this podcast and the other series that we have right here on SpecialChronicles.com. Our guest is Lisa Noble, fellow athlete leader from Special Olympics Illinois. This is our ComEd EnergyForce series of episodes that we're having in these about 2 months of EnergyForce related episodes. So our conversation with Lisa will continue after the break. When you talk about Colbert, we'll talk about the economy. We'll talk about a question that we always include these conversations with, about inclusion at the end of the episode. So stay tuned. Much more conversation with our friend Lisa Noble after the break right here on SpecialChronicles.com. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break from our conversation today to learn how you can become a Special Chronicles supporter so we can continue to produce this podcast. Support for Special Chronicles comes from listeners like you. As an independent public media podcast, Special Chronicles will always be there for you. Now we're asking you to be there for us. As a nonprofit independent media organization, we can only make programs like Special Chronicles with listener support. Our programs provide weekly, candid, honest, and inspiring conversations about the people with disabilities community that creates awareness, support, and advocacy within each week's episode. Listeners tell us our shows are an enjoyable and necessary podcast for the intellectual and developmental disability community and everyone else who is able to listen to stories about life from a different angle. Please, if you and your family love our weekly podcast, make a one-time, monthly, or annual gift of thanks today. Support this podcast at specialchronicles.com/give. That's specialchronicles.com/give. And now back to the show to continue the conversation today. And back to the show. Oh, I didn't see you there. I was drinking water. Doing a thing.
That's okay.
It's always good that you guys, when we're recording these shows, to have water nearby. That's a tip that we're going to give you. It's not an energy efficiency tip, but it'll be a hydration, a healthy athlete's tip that we'll give you. Always to make sure that you have water nearby. And we call it in a podcast. Well, just anytime in your day. Our guest is Lisa Noble, fellow athlete leader from Special Olympics, Illinois. So, Lisa, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, we have a little different angle that we're having for these series of EnergyForce conversations this year, and as you know, the past two years now, we've been in a global pandemic. I guess we're slowly coming out of it now. COVID is still here, it's still around us. But let's begin this segment in this part of the program today, and have you share with us how has COVID affected your life over the past year or the past 2 years?
Well, basically, just in my perspective, I can't speak for everybody with autism, but just not being able to get out that much, and not being able to, I'm good with, I'm somebody that likes to have schedules, and I don't deal with change that much. So having to adjust to that, where we couldn't go out, and then we had to have our meetings on Zoom and things.
Yeah.
That was a little difficult. But I've gotten used to it now, but it's taken me a while. So, I'm one that always likes to be working or busy doing something. So, like I said, just kind of that where you didn't know where you were going, kind of, and being careful, cautious, whatever, kind of, I had to, just like probably everybody else did, but, having autism didn't, help that. And then now it's like, it's made me more aware of my surroundings too, if that makes sense, So, I'm more sensitive of where, of who's around me and stuff. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And in what something that we had touched on in the pre-show before we started recording, and is you had mentioned that, and I've seen this as well, that in a lot of, whether it's on other podcasts or the news, or a lot of times when the past 2 years when people have been talking about COVID or the coronavirus, people tend to, I think for the most part, leave out all population, the intellectual, the developmental disability, special needs community. People kind of leave out people like us. On one of I think a couple of years ago, we did a podcast on an episode of this show, but a different series of episodes on the Unified at Work series. We did an episode on the daily challenges of COVID, of looking at United and looking at the airport. So we touched on it a little bit. We did a health series where we touched on a little bit of COVID, but I think overall in the mainstream media, it seems like there's not a lot of attention for all population, people with IDD and people with disabilities.
I agree, and I think we're one of it. I don't think it just was COVID either. It just depends. I think we're like the most overlooked, population, and I think that with us being athlete leaders, and like with you having your show and myself doing my show, that's kind of, it helps get the message out there. And that's kind of one of the things that like we're gonna do at USA Games is we're gonna try to see what is it like trying to, being able to compete, and how has COVID, affected you, before
Yeah.
that? So, but
Yeah.
again, I think it's because we've always been, told that we need to be hidden, and,
Yeah.
so I think that's how I feel about it.
Well, and a long time ago, like over 50 years ago, a lot of all population was hidden. But now, over 50 years later, more people are able to get to know us and hear our stories. And I think by having conversations like what we're having today with how you've shared, and we've had a couple other the past couple of weeks. We've had a few other ambassadors for ComEd have shared how COVID has affected them. People are able to heal all perspective, and a lot of times people, and I know, like with some of the health challenges that I've had, and I'm sure you can relate as well, that when it comes to COVID, we have to be extra careful with the masks, and making sure that, because like all population could be extra affected by COVID than somebody that doesn't have a intellectual developmental disability, right? Like
most definitely. I mean, that's why, as soon as, like, we just got our 4th booster like 4 weeks ago, but as soon as they were available, we made sure, and got them, because knock on wood, so far we haven't, gotten it, but the more protection you have, because if there was no vaccine out there, it could be deadly for our population, and
yeah, absolutely.
so, the better you protect yourself, the more, you can. And from what I've understood too, it's also hard, because if you get sick, I mean, now you can have somebody going to the hospital with you, but before, when you weren't allowed to, I mean, you kind of feel like, I've heard stories, I don't know about you, but I've heard stories of people not knowing what they were going to do, because, or that they didn't want to go because they'd be by themselves.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into, and I think another note that we can mention to people, that I should say, in addition to the sports and leadership and education programs that Special Olympics have, I think someone said, and maybe even when I had the chief health officer at Special Olympics International on this podcast a couple of times, we did a series with her. I said that Special Olympics is the world's largest health organization, or I might have got that mixed up a little bit, but I don't know if you heard something similar, but the world's largest health of the health programs that Special Olympics has for us. So they really do a lot. I mean, they do a lot here in Illinois, but even on a global level with the health programs in everything from eyesight and hearing, and like there's a lot of really powerful health initiatives that Special Olympics has, right?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, I remember, I don't know if it was in Abu Dhabi where you were at, or if it was in Seattle, but I remember hearing a touching story that I forget where he was from, but there was an athlete that for the longest time couldn't hear, but he didn't have access to, a hearing test or whatever. But then all of a sudden he got his hearing aid put in, and he could hear his coaches. So, I mean, you just hear stories like that, and it touches your heart, but it's like, that's where we need to go. It shouldn't just be right there. So,
if people want to find out more about the health initiatives at Special Olympics, I think we put some links up. If you go to specialchronicles.com/health, specialchronicles.com/health, I think on that page we should have some links to some of the different health initiatives that Special Olympics have. Or you can just go to specialolympics.org, and they have information about the health initiatives that Special Olympics has. As you know, this year, 2022, we're slowly coming out of COVID. I mean, we just said that COVID is still around us. So even though some of the masks mandates are being lifted, I know I think it was just on the news yesterday that on air travel, on flights and airport, I think it was just, I mean, it's not really required anymore. I don't know that much about. I go back to work tomorrow, so I'll probably hear a little bit more about that. But COVID is still around. We still have to occasionally, like I don't know about you, but like whenever I go into the grocery store, or if I'm on the bus, I'll still wear a mask. But if there's not a lot of people around, you can take it off, but you still have to be careful. So how do you see 2022 affecting your life with COVID?
I hope, I guess I'm an optimist. So I hope that we get to a point where everybody just kind of either is just vigilant about if they don't have the boosters or the shots or whatever, to either get them or just to wear a mask if you don't. But I'm hoping that we can get back to some sense of normal. I think that's what we need now. I think our population, but also other businesses are struggling, and I think that we just need some sense of normalcy. So
yeah, and speaking of that, some sense of normalcy, I'm sure I could speak to this next point as well, but I'll let you, since you're the guest on this episode, can maybe share with us a little bit. We're gonna in just about a couple minutes, we'll take our next sponsor break, but share with us just briefly, in just maybe a couple 2 minutes or so, what you have seen Special Olympics has done to keep everyone healthy. Whether it's Return to Play, whether it's these Zoom workouts, or these athlete leadership trainings that we've had on Zoom. What has Special Olympics done, either locally in Illinois or on a national or international level?
I think what you mentioned, it's all of it combined. I think that they knew that. I think they figured, our population would have a hard time with change, like I had said before. So they were trying to figure out a way to engage, and Zoom was a great way to do that. But I also think, like, the return to play, we needed some sort of normalcy. I mean, at first it was like I understood where we could go back, and depending upon where we're at, with fans or no fans, but at least there was where we could still participate, So, and I think they've been really good about that. And I think they've been really good about kind of keeping us informed of the different messages that comes out too. So,
yeah. And speaking of that, I think one of the things that was launched a couple years ago, I think probably back in 2021, the beginning of COVID, is the Special Olympics School of Strength, where they partnered with WWE and I know those have been really benefited from it. If our listeners go to, I'll try to remember to put this link in the show notes, but if you go to specialchronicles.com/health, that's specialchronicles.com/health, we have links to some of those School of Strength workouts. I think there's some Fit5 at home workouts on there as well, and some other. I think there was an episode we did on that health series on virtual sports. There was some other kind of athletes at home type of exercises. There was the Sauna Move Challenge that I'm sure you participated as well in that Sauna Move Challenge.
Most definitely, yeah.
That was really, really beneficial. We're going to take our next really quick, just 43-second sponsor break. When we come back, We will kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about how the economy is affected. We'll get into some energy efficiency tips and that question about inclusion at the very end of the episode. A conversation with Lisa, fellow athlete leader from Special Olympics Illinois. We'll continue after the break right here on Special Chronicles. Support for Special Chronicles comes from ComEd. Special Chronicles is proud to partner with the ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program. The EnergyForce is the country's first energy efficiency education program designed for and taught by people with disabilities. ComEd is powering lives and really is powering us here at Special Chronicles to keep the lights on and our technology is powered on. As ComEd powers the lives of us, they are literally giving a voice to people with special needs. We thank ComEd for the generous support of our mission at Special Chronicles. Learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That's specialchronicles.com/ComEd. And we're back. Our guest on this episode 477 is fellow athlete leader Lisa Noble from Special Olympics Illinois. And we're going to kind of switch gears in this next segment, and talk a little bit about the economy, Lisa. As you know, I'm sure just like COVID, it's probably within all population. Those of us with intellectual and developmental disabilities, it's probably not a topic that's covered that much. I know in some of the athlete leadership trainings we've had some like better money habit workshops with that Bank of America has done. I know Bank of America is a big supporter of all Southern Tribal International Global Messengers, and we've done some other. But over the past year, the economy has affected everyone. Inflation is the highest in history, which means that everything we buy costs us more money, while people are not making any more money, and nonprofit organizations such as Special Olympics, Special Chronicles, and so many others are struggling to get in more donations. People have less money to donate. So with that being said, let's maybe begin this part of the program today and share with you how has the current economy affected you?
Well, it has. I mean, at first it didn't, but now that prices are still, are rising, I mean, even just with the cost of food, we kind of have to make decisions on, how many times you go to the store and even with that, we still have to make decisions about, what we're gonna eat. And then also even with, enjoying ourselves, like going out to eat or something, I mean, we used to have the luxury of, going maybe twice a week or something, 2 days out, but now it's like, we have to kind of cut down on that a little bit, just to, save our money. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for sharing how the economy has affected you. Let's maybe we kind of in the introduction of this segment of the program today, we shared a little bit about how many nonprofit organizations have been struggling the past a couple of years with COVID and how the economy is really affecting everyone. So how has our current economy affected Special Olympics? Have you seen Special Olympics, whether it's Illinois or Special Olympics International? Have you seen the current economy affecting Special Olympics the past couple of years?
Maybe not. Well, yeah, even here, I guess, because like when we did our polar plunge, sometimes, our fundraisers, a lot of people are, can't give as much as they, to non-for-profit. So, in that sense, that's one big way that they've been struggling is, and the polar plunge is one of our biggest, fundraisers. So, and I don't know how you felt, but like, I know when I was asking for donations, I kind of felt bad in a way, because it's like, I know people are struggling and I know people, so I would always say, I understand if you can't, but, it'd just
Yeah.
be helpful. So,
Oh,
but I think all organizations, I think all Special Olympics all around, I think that's one of their biggest things is the fundraising that's hurt.
yeah. And I think even if maybe the full, like maybe in the past where someone maybe been able to give a high amount, maybe like even people have maybe been able to only give a small amount. So like maybe instead of a 25 donation, people have been able to only give 5 or 10. And so I'm sure that has also kind of, and I'm sure even like in a lot of the events that Special Olympics has, they maybe not been able to do that much as
Right.
when
I mean,
the
yeah,
way
I know that
even more.
we've had this. I know. I just remember, and you probably do too. But there were probably more events that we were as athlete leaders, what we were part of. And that got scaled down because of COVID and stuff. So
Yeah.
so
Absolutely. So what do you believe? What can we all do to make our life better during these challenging economic times?
I think just to be, again, I mean, I'm a optimist, so just basically, just know that it'll get better. Sometimes, everything has to get better, and I just keep reminding myself too that I mean, so there's somebody out there like. Especially now, with Ukraine, it's like, I might be suffering somewhat, but not as much as somebody else. Some other people are probably suffering a lot more than I am. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And all high inflation has caused energy costs to go up with people's energy bills. And as you know, as EnergyForce ambassadors, one of the speaking things we do, whether it's at in-person events, whether it's on podcasts like what we're doing right now, is to help people be more efficient with their energy, help them to be able to save energy, which will then help them able to save money. And if they're able to save money, then they can, help to support different causes. And like what we talked about in the previous segment, or in the first part of this segment. So what can we do as ComEd EnergyForce ambassadors to help everyone control their energy costs?
that's a good question. I think just giving them helpful tips, just reminding them, even if it's, and if of all the tips, if they just take one, that's all, then they can, then that's one way they, like my main thing is, and I've been really, before I started this program, and I still do it, I find myself doing it still a little bit. I find myself, leaving lights on in the house, or when I walk away from a room. So, so even just turning off your lights, and people
Yeah,
don't realize, or even like, if you're not playing a video game or something, like the power strips, then people don't
yeah,
understand, how much energy that, drains for your,
yeah.
your energy bill. So,
Oh, even the TV as well.
mhm.
Like maybe not necessarily always leaving that on, but like if you're not in the room when your TV is, then tone that off.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned those tips, and we'll get into some tips in our final sponsor break. Well, people, let's just tease our listeners a little bit and say you might recognize a familiar face in that final sponsor break. But first, do you feel that we might be able to do in-person events this year with the ComEd EnergyForce program and going into the community, going into neighborhoods and educating people about energy efficiency and solar tips? And what are your plans this year? I know we just had a ComEd meeting. What was it? About a month or so ago.
Yeah.
And we're slowly going back to input, but we'll kind of still having the online digital part of it, like with this podcast, but then we'll go on kind of slowly. So share with us a little bit about kind of what are your plans this year with when it comes to in-person. I know in the pre-show you mentioned that kind of post USA games.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait until USA Games just because between USA games and then our summer games is right after that. And so, but I think once that goes past, I mean, one of the things I'm going to do is we have a farmers market that we have here, and I've done engagements there in the past. So I was going to reach out to them, and then I would, maybe do the lights again, at the zoo, and then just a few more. But I also just want to stay safe too. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think what I was planning on doing was I was going to do a mixture of both,
Yeah.
just
That,
so.
yeah, and I think I'm kind of the same way. I want to make sure that I'm safe, so I might do, maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe lights either in the fall or towards the more the second half of the year, just like yourself. But then with this EnergyForce podcast series, really kind of staying with this kind of digital type, format where we're able to kind of be at home, but we're still able to educate people with a more of a digital. So it's kind of like a hybrid of kind of both types of engagements with people when it comes to
Right. Because, like, I post tips all the time on my social media account, just because to me, that's just safer. And, it still gets a large audience out there, but it's still a lot safer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and stuff. So, but because I think in the long run, you just have to, do what safe feels right for you. So, and safety is the first one on many things. So
on
the
for
list.
a lot of us, and not just ComEd wants us to be safe, but even within our organization, Special Olympics wants us to be safe. Even here at Special Chronicles, we want to be safe as well. So that's why it's good that we are able to look out for each other and kind of have a combination of digital and kind of some in person as we slowly try to kind of come out of COVID just a little bit. Speaking of those tips, this final sponsor break, before we get to some final thoughts as we come to a close just shortly, this next sponsor break features some of those energy efficiency tips that we share with the public when we're at events or in the digital engagements. And this is a video that, people will hear that familiar voice because it was a video that you and I did a couple years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. It was I think it was when COVID first came out.
It came out, yeah.
And I think that we were trying to figure out a way to do it. So
it was. It was probably back in 2020 when COVID first came out. We were trying to figure out how, and I think this was even before we developed this 10-part podcast series that we're doing now. We were trying to kind of figure out, okay, what's some ways that we can engage the community with how to save energy. And this was a video that we wrote the script for, right? And we came up with a list of energy efficiency tips. And so we'll let you all kind of hear some of those energy efficiency tips, and we'll come back with some final thoughts after the break. Our guest is fellow athlete leader Lisa Noble from Special Olympics Illinois. This is episode 477, and we'll be back after you guys get to hear about some of those energy efficiency tips right here on SpecialChronicles.com.
Hi, my name is Lisa Noble, and I'm a ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador and an athlete with Special Olympics Illinois.
Hi, my name is Daniel Spakowski, and I also am a ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador and founder of a company called Special Chronicles.
The ComEd EnergyForce Program is a program that hires people with disabilities to teach the public how to save energy and money.
It's the country's first energy efficiency program of its kind.
Saving energy is especially important while everyone is at home due to COVID-19. We're using more electricity than ever before. Just think about how many more times you are opening the refrigerator door these days.
And while the economy is stressed, it's more critical than ever to save money where we can. Following these tips can save energy and money in this time of COVID-19.
Wash your clothes in cold water and use the dryer sparingly.
Your dryer can take up to 7 times more energy than the washer.
Turn off and unplug any electrical devices or power strips you are not using.
Electrical devices can continue to zap power even when turned off if they're still plugged in. We call them vampire devices.
Use LED bulbs.
They use 25% less energy than incandescent bulbs and last up to 25 times longer, saving you lots of money over time.
Keep your refrigerator between 35 and 38 degrees.
And be sure to use Energy Star appliances.
And last but not least, check out ComEd.com/home savings for more tips and rebates.
Lisa and I would like to thank you for taking the time to listen to us today.
Remember, we are all in this together.
Stay healthy.
And stay safe.
Bye. We're back. Our guest this week on the Special Chronicles show is fellow athlete leader Lisa Noble from Special Olympics Illinois. This is episode 477. I'm Daniel, founder of Special Chronicles. And Lisa, did you want to comment briefly on any of those tips?
I think that, the one that I don't know about you, but I think the one that I found surprisingly was was two. Was the power strips, and also, the temperature to wash your clothes. I think those were the two that, surprised me when we did the training that one time, especially the power strips though, because you would think that if you're not using, even though they're plugged in, they're not, if you're not using the electronic device that's plugged in, but I guess, in a way, I guess it does. So
yeah. That would be, I think I found as well. The power strips was a surprising one. If people want to learn more about any more of those energy efficiency tips, we'll remind you again in just a moment, but you can go to ComEd.com/EnergyForce and to learn more about the EnergyForce Ambassador Program, as well as ComEd, I'm sure, has tips. I think it's ComEd.com. In the video, I think we said ComEd.com/home savings, but I think it's ComEd.com/info. And we'll make sure to include those links in the show notes on specialchronicles.com for episode 477. Or if you're listening to this, wherever you get your podcast, just look in the description below where we have voices. And thank you to our partners, and we'll have links to where you can learn more about energy efficiency in the show notes. What are your thoughts, Lisa, on how ComEd is getting organizations and individuals with disabilities like yourself and myself and the other ComEd ambassadors? How do you think ComEd is doing with this EnergyForce Ambassador Program in our community?
I think they're doing really well. I think hopefully more companies will see this and want to join in, because I know with United, they've done it as well. But I think, it helps when, but it helps that, it helps get our voices heard and saying, and it also gets the message heard that, just because we might have an intellectual disability doesn't mean we can't do anything. It's not like we have to sit at home and, twiddle our thumbs, we can actually do stuff. So,
so it's nice that those companies out there like ComEd with showing people, whether it's ComEd or United Airlines or, I'm sure there's other companies as well, but able to kind of let the public know that there's a lot more than we can do than maybe on the full front. People might just see our challenges, but with the ComEd, we're able to, whether it's an in-person event or a digital engagement, like with this podcast, they're able to see that we can educate the people about energy efficiency, whether it's at United Airlines and they see any of us athletes working as service ambassadors, the public is able to see us physically at the airport. People are physically able to see us at a ComEd EnergyForce table. And so that I think it goes a long way that when other companies that might not be as involved with all population, they're able to see that it goes a lot. Like it's not just ComEd and other companies are not just maybe donating money. They'll physically being unified with us. They're physically like leading to include in really making a positive difference in our lives. Is there anything else that ComEd can do to help those of us with disabilities?
I think that, just what we're doing now, but I think, having more organizations join. But I also just think, maybe partnering, maybe having some of us go out like what we do for athlete leadership, maybe, and go out to and partner with Special Olympics and partner with them and say, oh, we can do some unified leadership training or something about, how you can, how you can work with somebody with an intellectual disability. So.
That's a perfect. We should definitely make a note of that and maybe talk more about that off air. But I love that idea, and we should talk to Karen Milligan about that as well. That we should definitely think of talking with ComEd of doing a unified leadership training with them, because I'm sure. I mean, ComEd is already doing some, with this EnergyForce program, but I'm sure there might be something new that ComEd that they might learn by taking part in the unified leadership training.
Most definitely.
So great advice. Any before we get to some plugs and that final question, any final thoughts on your overall time here today on the Special Chronicles show? I know this is your second time on this pod.
No, I think I just think that it's great that we get to show our voices, and that we get to, show people that, showcase, that, hey, just because, we have, like I said, just because I have autism or, a disability of sorts doesn't mean that we can't be protective members of society. I mean, you have your podcast show, I have mine, and we also, do other stuff, but, it just shows that we're all unique. It's just that everybody just wants to be, and everybody wants to be included just like anybody else would. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people want to learn more about Special Olympics Illinois, they can go to soirl.org, right? soirl.org. And if you are not in the Illinois area, you can go to specialolympics.org to find your local program. Across the U.S., across the globe, you can find your local region and specialolympics.org. If you want to learn more about the ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program, Lisa, where can they go?
They can go to comed.com/EnergyForce.
Yep, and that's where, and we'll make sure to include those links in the show notes on specialchronicles.com. If you want to listen to other ComEd EnergyForce ambassadors like Lisa and myself, and some ComEd staff and other energy efficiency tips, you go to specialchronicles.com/EnergyForce. That's where we have archived all these episodes related to the ComEd EnergyForce conversations series of episodes, series of conversations. If you want to subscribe to Lisa, your podcast, we have links to where people can subscribe on specialchronicles.com/amazing individuals, and from there people can find links to they can listen on Apple Podcasts.
They can listen to Apple on Apple or Spotify. And then we just got on Google Podcast a couple days ago. So basically any place that offers podcasts, basically.
And you also have videos of your podcast, right? On YouTube?
Yes, I also do YouTube. Yeah, so we also have a channel that we do that we put it we do our videos on YouTube. So subscribe there as well.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend you guys, wherever you are listening to this podcast, Special Chronicles, go and search for Amazing Individuals. It's always a lot of fascinating guests that Lisa, you and your husband Cote have on. So you guys definitely go and subscribe. We have links on specialchronicles.com/amazing individuals. And you guys want to make sure that you all subscribe to Lisa's podcast, because looking forward to hearing those interviews that you and Coach do in Orlando at the USA Games. I'm sure they're going to be fascinated. We're just about out of time, but we always conclude with the one final question. And to introduce that final question, we've got a bumper. So let's go ahead and roll that bumper.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising.
Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference.
Our demands are
Equality.
Dignity.
and the recognition of our
Shared humanity.
We will not stop
or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
More divided than ever.
and coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution.
is inclusion.
Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
Ever since I came back from the 2019 World Games, I've been concluding all these podcast episodes, all these conversations with one final question. And as you know, in Special Olympics, the evolution and inclusion is at the heart of what we do. It's even at the heart of what we do here at Special Chronicles as well. Always conclude with asking this final question. I'll do the same with you as well, Lisa. What does inclusion mean to you?
Oh, so inclusion means to me is just being accepted. Being able to go into like any place, like just being more accepted, not being judged. Or like I like, for example, going to a Northwestern game and not, or someplace, and not being judged by the way I look, or just because I have autism doesn't mean I can't enjoy it. So I think just being included, being more included.
Well, that's a perfect way to wrap up this episode. Wish we had more time, but I'm sure we'll have to have you on again, or we can even do a crossover episode with where I'm on your show, you're back on this show, and we can. I'm sure we'll have another conversation soon. If you want to, again, you can visit specialchronicles.com for links to follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and join in the conversation on our social media, on our Instagram and Facebook. And it really goes a long way. We love interacting with you on there. Remember to subscribe and rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can subscribe to our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content. And again, specialchronicles.com for links to subscribe and follow. We'll see you next week with another ComEd EnergyForce episode. And hope you guys all have a great week. And looking forward to continuing this series next week right here on the Special Chronicles show, as we can continue talking with EnergyForce ambassadors. And if you want to be a guest, go to specialchronicles.com/contact, and you can see how you can get in touch. And I'd love to talk to you all on this podcast. And we'll see you next week. Remember, choose to include. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles Shows podcast. Visit specialchronicles.com to follow Special Chronicles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of new episodes. Also, subscribe to our newsletter mailing list to sign up for our updates and get exclusive content delivered to your inbox. Remember to do what you do with these podcasts. Subscribe or follow and rate and review Special Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, and wherever you get your podcasts. Finally, please share this episode and all of our podcasts with your friends and family. Help us grow our audience and reach 5,000 downloads of our audio podcasts and over 14,000 average monthly listeners. Have a great week, and we'll see you back here next week with exciting new guests. See you next week.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.